Today we celebrate our nation's birthday. If not for 3 days in July 150 years ago, our nation would be profoundly different. I'm talking about the Battle of Gettysburg, a battle that turned the tide of a war that preserved the Union. General Robert E. Lee's intent was to take the Army of Northern Virginia as far north as Harrisburg or Philadelphia as a way to influence the northern politicians. By chance, he encountered the Army of the Potomac.
The battle here at Gettysburg was not planned in any shape, form, or fashion. When Robert E. Lee invades Pennsylvania, he has an idea of where he wants to go, but Gettysburg is really not on his radar. Circumstances, though, will evolve. The Union Army will arrive and appear a lot closer than Lee had expected, and as the circumstances will dictate, the armies will move, trying to reassemble, to coordinate themselves, and the battle simply opens up in and around the town of Gettysburg.
What followed was an intense battle, where the future of the nation pendulated for 3 days.
The battle July 1st is going to rage, and it will result in a Confederate victory. Though Robert E. Lee had not intended to engage in battle that early or with his army dispersed as it was, he still is able to walk away with a victory, which is pretty normal for General Lee.
Lee's mystique was ever growing. A victory on northern soil could prove everlasting for the Confederacy. But on day 2, the Union would stand pat. Newly appointed General George Meade halted the advance with some quick thinking.
On July 2nd, as those Union troops were being thrown in piecemeal, many of them were literally plugging the gaps from the Confederate assault. And it would have been a swirl of battle. It would have been men charging forth, being pushed back, reforming, charging again. The wheat field would change hands numerous times. Some talk about a whirlwind of a fight down in that area. Things were back and forth so much. Confusion was rampant.
In that confusion, Little Round Top was left open to a Confederate attack.
The fighting on Little Round Top is pretty crucial to the Union Army on July 2nd. Initially, that area was supposed to be held by General Dan Sickles, commander of the Union 3rd Corps.
However, Sickles moved his men 3/4 of a mile to the front of the Union line, leaving a gap between Little Round Top and the Union flank, all while the Confederates were advancing to this strategic point.
When the attack begins at roughly 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it's left to a number of individuals to piecemeal together a defense of this hill. Because Sickles had left it open, no one had planned for any units specifically to hold this high ground, and now everyone was kind of flying by the seat of their pants trying to fill these gaps. And so one of the first units on Little Round Top is going to be a brigade commanded by Colonel Strong Vincent. And he is going to be on the southern slope of Little Round Top, and his men are going to feel the brunt of the initial Confederate assault coming around.
Those men were the 20th Maine Regiment under Colonel Chamberlain, who ended the day with a victorious bayonet charge holding the Union line. The future of the Union could very well be decided in the coming hours.
Lee is looking to really break the Union line at this point. He's really got one more opportunity. He has tried the flanks or the end of the Union line. Where might the Union Army be the weakest? Probably in the center. And in fact, the evening before, General George Meade looked to the commander in the Union center and said, "Be prepared for an attack on your front tomorrow."
Lee would attack the Union center, a mile-wide 12,000-man assault led by Generals Pettigrew, Tremble, and Pickett. Under a hail of gunfire, the Confederates would advance across a mile of open field. Ammunition was low, and at the angle, Pickett would realize that his men were all alone. A last-gasp effort for victory in the north lied ahead. The Union line must hold. The future of the nation depended on it.
And so at this point, on July 3rd, when that frontal assault is over, and it's now, and in history, termed Pickett's Charge, once that charge is over, the Confederate Army is really finished here at Gettysburg.
Lee is forced to retreat, and the Union has a major victory on their soil. A victory to lift the spirits of a nation on the eve of the 4th of July.
When the Union Army has this moral push because of the victory up here, I think it may, along with a number of other things, give these men another reason to fight. In that the idea that the 4th, this independence, this freedom from rule, could be extrapolated to those millions of individuals who were still, in part, in chattel slavery. And so tying this into this 4th of July experience, as the men will continue to struggle for the next 2 years, the overall importance, the overall reason for this is that all men created equal. All men shall be free.
Behind me stands the high water mark of the Confederacy. 51,000 casualties later, the tide of the Civil War began to turn. Lincoln himself demanded that the men who fought here should never be forgotten. 150 years later, that request is still being honored. For WHVL, I'm Andrew Kalista.